Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's panel, Advocacy in Friendships and Relationships. We are so delighted that you could join us today. My name is Kimberly, and I will be moderating the panel as a volunteer for Emotions Matter, along with Daniela, who's another co-moderator for this panel. While I'm doing the introductions, we invite you to write in the chat where you're joining from us today. Personally, I'm in Ohio right now, so greetings, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen real quick and go over some of the technical stuff. All right. So Emotions Matter is a 501c nonprofit organization founded in 2015 to support, educate, and advocate for those impacted by borderline personality disorder. To learn more about us and our programs, you can go to our website, www.emotionsmatterbpd.org, or head to the expo. All right. Emotions Matter strives to create a safe, judgment-free space for people with borderline personality disorder. We accept that there is a spectrum of experiences within the BPD community, and we honor where people are on their journey without judgment or assumptions. And we encourage people to define their own path toward recovery. And we speak as experts of our own lived experience, not as medical experts. Some community guidelines. Questions during sessions can be asked using the Q&A box, not the chat. Comments can be made using the chat box. Use respectful language in the session chat. Any inappropriate messaging, including harassment, bullying, or monopolizing the chat, will be deleted. We accept differences and promote acceptance, especially with regard to gender, sexual orientation, identity, race, ethnicity, age, religion, disability, or politics. Avoid explicit expressions of self-harm or trauma, which may be upsetting to others. And panels and plenary sessions will be recorded and available after the conference. So no screenshots or recording on personal devices. And just some safety guidelines. If at any time during BPDFest 2022 you found yourself overwhelmed, struggling, or for any reason in need of support, we encourage you to reach out to your support system. Audience members may experience intense and painful emotions, feelings, memories, thoughts, and or reactions to content shared, so please participate at your own risk. You're also welcome to take a break from BPDFest 22 at any time or withdraw from it entirely if you feel you need so. In the event of a medical, including mental health emergency, please seek care through a doctor, hospital, or emergency call number. Thanks. And I'm going to hand it over to Daniela.
All right, thanks so much, Kimberly. So hi, everyone. I'm Daniela Labate Cavalli. I am a volunteer here at Emotions Matter. I am a mental health clinician who is currently working in New York for a peer-run membership organization. I do lots of training and technical assistance these days, and I have a history of working in outpatient mental health programs. It's my pleasure to be here moderating today's panel. I'm also someone who is affected by BPD through family. So with that, I'm going to ask our panelists to do a brief introduction. I'm just going to go in order of who's on my screen. So Kimberly R., would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. I'm Kimberly. You can call me Kim or Kimberly, whatever. I am a writer and producer based in New York City. I have BPD. I was diagnosed when I was 19, so it's been almost 10 years. And I wrote and created and starred in a web series about BPD and relationships. Actually, it's a sort of romantic comedy with BPD in the forefront. It's called Life or Death Basically. You can check it out at lifeordeathbasically.com or on Vimeo. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this. I love this topic.
Awesome. Thank you and welcome, Kimberly. Coral?
Hi, everyone. My name is Coral. I'm from the Bronx, New York. I hold a master's in social work, but I currently work in compliance and quality. I am a volunteer for Emotions Matter, Inc., previously a peer facilitator for their support groups. I was diagnosed with BPD 4 years ago now. So I continue to just, volunteer and speak on the diagnosis and my own personal experience.
Excellent. Thank you, Coral. Welcome. And Meryl.
Hello, my name is Meryl. I am from MSU. I live in Montclair, go to MSU right now. I was diagnosed with BPD when I was 17, so it's been about 7 years, and I've been involved in DBT treatment immediately when I was diagnosed to like doing through now. And I like this topic too. I think, there's so many different types of relationships, like friendships, intimate relationships, family. Great topic. I'm excited to talk about it.
Thank you, Meryl. Yeah, I think we're in for a pretty robust conversation today. Just want to remind everyone who's listening to just use the Q&A box if you have any questions, because we're going to keep track of those. And, we've set aside some time at the end to answer your questions as well. So I'm going to jump right into it. I guess the first question is to really kind of expand a little bit more about yourselves and give us, share a little bit of information about how BPD has affected, any of your relationships. Meryl, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So I wanted to talk about that's currently out by BB Rexa. It's called Sabotage. And I think it's like for me, I really resonated with the song because it talks about like, it's why do I sabotage everything I love? Like, I matches in my back pocket. I think it's like, I'm the queen of burning bridges. When I heard that, I was like, oh my goodness, it's like a very like BPD like ish song. So I just wanted to bring that up because it just was something that helped. I was just able to really connect with it. So if anyone else is looking for like some music to check out, but in my relationships, I have a really good example. So like my boyfriend, he works construction. He does historical restoration, and a couple years ago when we first started dating, he went to New Paltz, New York to work. And he was only gone for like half a week, maybe like a week at most, but I had to visit him. Like so I took Amtrak, like I got on a ticket, I went on the Amtrak, I went all the way to New Paltz, I Ubered to where he was, and the next morning I Ubered back, took the Amtrak, and like I definitely didn't have to do that. I definitely wish I would have been able to just wait until he got home, but I just think it's a really good example of how like it was too hard for me to like be away from him for like this long period of time that I kind of like spent money, was like very impulsive, and like did anything I could to like be with him, if only for
Thank you, Meryl. Coral, do you want to jump in?
Well, BPD has affected my relationships more so in the romantic, intimate capacity. It led to toxic relationships. It led to not really understanding why I couldn't find my own independence in a relationship, and finding myself to be dependent in relationships. So, once I got my diagnosis, it was kind of easier to put words into what was going on, like inside of me, my anxiety of being separated from my partner, my anxiety of losing them, or having our relationship end. But after being diagnosed, it was easier to kind of navigate relationships a little better and just, speak about what I need in the relationship. So it definitely still affects my relationships now, in terms of, dictating like who will accept my diagnosis or who will understand. Um, and then how that relationship will develop over time. Definitely being just conscious that, hey, I have BPD and these are a few things that I go through, and being vocal about it in my relationships.
Kimberly, do you want to jump in and maybe add something?
Yeah. So I feel like, kind of to echo both what Coral and Meryl said, I definitely have had a history of both friendships and relationships that have become really dependent and obsessive. I remember even I think this was in like third grade, I had this best friend. And I remember telling her like she like made another friend, and I was like, no, like I have to be your only friend. And I feel like that almost sort of like is how I approach relationships my whole life. And I didn't really realize until it got so bad and so intense that and when I was diagnosed, that it was from BPD and it wasn't just some like strange defect in me specifically as a person. But yeah, I think the ways that I've sort of approached it, both in my current long-term romantic relationship, but also in friendships, because I have a lot of very close friendships that I've managed to, maintain from before I was diagnosed through to now, is just um, practicing a lot of open communication and making sure that they have the resources to sort of understand where I'm coming from when I say like this particular behavior is triggering to me, for them to be able to understand why and sort of what that's about, and also knowing that we have open communication for them to draw boundaries with me if that's necessary as well, and not have it sort of send me into a spiral and change our relationship.
So you've all really brought up some of the challenges that you faced in relationships. I wonder if we could move into a conversation now about how you've overcome those challenges, if you've had any resources or supports that you want to talk about.
I mean, I'll jump in and go first. I am so in my current relationship, something that was very helpful for us is that I was completely upfront about it on our first date, like sitting in a bar. I was like, I have borderline personality disorder. Like, he didn't know what that was, but it sort of is something that I lead with, because I find that to be helpful for me, and I know that if I have sort of really kept it to myself for a long period of time in the past, that may be something that's like more helpful for other people. They don't want it to become like a huge part of who people see them as, which is totally fine. But for me, I realized that it's harder and harder to um, sort of express it the longer that I wait. So I like to just jump into it. And also, in my current relationship, we made seeking therapy together a priority from pretty early on, from about a year in, so that we could, who knew a lot about BPD, but also knew a lot about dynamics in couples, and was able to sort of uh, help me to advocate for myself, and also help him to understand what I was feeling, and also know where he can advocate for himself as well.
Coral or Meryl, do either of you want to jump in on this one?
I think for me, it was definitely becoming more educated on the diagnosis. So, reading books on BPD, articles. Also, drawing on a blank. I mean, becoming educated and then educating others around me was very helpful for me. Oh, and joining Emotions Matter was really helpful for me, because it helped me build a community of others who were experiencing similar things as I was. And then getting involved into the peer support program, and being able to facilitate groups for others, really great experience for me, to kind of navigate and help me along my recovery journey. So there's definitely resources out there online, and Emotions Matter as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, I find when it comes to like issues in relationships, I often know this, and I can fall back on my DBT skills, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. Um, I just had an example written down, but like as I was writing this example of a time that I got dysregulated, and because I was arguing with a friend, it was like the first time I'd ever really argued with one of my newer friends who was also my roommate at the time. As I'm writing this my lived experience, I'm like, wait, I totally could have used the fast skill here. Like, and I'm like thinking, and so I just like, for me, a big resource has been like, I like just like trying to find the skills through my experiences, like what works for me, what doesn't work for me, like self-reflection is really helpful. I will say it, but I don't really do it, like journaling. It's something I strive to do more. I think things like that are like really helpful to figure out, like, okay, we got in this fight, whether it's like a partner, whether it's a friend or family member, to kind of like look through it and say like, what, like break it down, like what happened, where can, so that we're not fixed, but where can I put a skill in. So I think like self-reflection has been really helpful for me to overcome.
Yeah, I feel like just to jump off of that, something that I've found really helpful too in like using DBT skills and things like that in relationships is being able to recognize when it's like an issue that I need to bring up and address with the other person, when it's something that's going on for me internally that I can like journal about and be like, oh, I'm projecting, I'm like assuming what the other person thinks, I'm like trying to predict the future, whatever those sort of different types of thinking are, and I can work that out myself and know that it'll pass, as opposed to something that I actually need to like call that person up and talk out with them, because a lot of the time it is just something that I've completely sort of come up with in my own brain that I need to like work out by myself or in therapy.
Yeah.
Well, and you're actually a really good segue to our next question, because you're talking a little bit about like advocating for yourself in your own relationship, right? So that's my next question. What do you do to advocate for yourself in your own relationships? Maybe some of you can give some examples of that.
Yeah. So for me, I was thinking a lot about this question because I'm often, I'm not comfortable. How do I explain this? My BPD symptoms that are like outward presenting, so like behaviors and maybe like emotional dysregulation, like I can be that way around like my parents and my boyfriend right now. But a big hard part for me in friendships is like letting the BPD me, like, like come out or whatever, like have like an emotional dysregulation episode in front of a friend. So that's like hard. Like a lot of, I feel like we're talking about, well, when do you know to like tell someone I have BPD? And with my friends, it's like so different than with my boyfriend. And yes, I live with my boyfriend right now, but I think one way to advocate is like kind of with the friends, like in my experience, knowing when the relationship no longer serves you. We were talking about this before, like whether it's because you participate in activities that you no longer do or you outgrew each other. But I had like this experience right now of this friend I had, but the conclusion was that we kind of just drifted apart, and it was scary, like before it actually happened, before the friendship was over. To advocate for myself, I kind of just, she wrote me a letter. She put it under my dorm room door. So I didn't even see her when she told me she didn't want to be friends with me anymore. I didn't try to like write her back. I didn't try to like go see her down the hall and be like, wait, can we like fix this? Can we work on? I was like, okay, that was my way of kind of like advocating without having to like say to someone, like, to myself, I kind of just advocated by letting that relationship. I think it's important to follow the natural flow, just to see how you feel. And if you're feeling like this time we've outgrown each other, then you probably have.
Coral, what about you?
I think for me, it's important to just like vocalize when I need space from someone in a relationship. Um, Also, when I feel like, I think sometimes, being diagnosed with BPD, we don't want to be too much or like ask for too much, but I've learned that it's okay to be able to express your feelings. Sometimes like after I got diagnosed, I was just like, am I asking for too much? Am I being unreasonable? But I think you learn that the difference, and then you're able to say like, hey, I feel like, if a friend is distancing themselves, hey, we haven't talked in a while. What's going on? And if you need that reassurance, like it's okay to ask for it. Like, where are we now? Like, if I have to say, hey, I love you, like, just to like hear it back or something like that. I think you know, if you haven't seen a friend in a while, like, and you feel like, you know, that's problematic, being able to bring it up in kind of like a calm demeanor, not being like, hey, like, why are you abandoning me, or why are you, you know, or why are you distancing yourself. But I think it's important to really express how you feel, and not be so afraid of coming off as, you know, being too much, or being unreasonable. Um, as I learn like more things about BPD, or like ways to manage like all these skills, like I like sharing it with my friends. I like sharing it with you know, like, hey, look, this is something I'm really excited about. I guess that's a form of advocacy, because you let them know, like, hey, this is what I'm working on, and this is something that I'm utilizing. You know, so if they're your support system, they know, like, hey, if you're going through a hard time, here are a few things. So that's definitely a few ways that I've advocated.
Kimberly, do you want to jump in there to add anything else, or should we move on to the next question? You sort of started us off, but I want to make sure you have a chance to.
Yeah, I mean, I just sort of want to jump off of what Coral said and say that, like, I think that's such a great way to look at things, is to remember that I know we're all sort of fed so much about how, like, with BPD, like, your emotions a lot of the time are irrational, your thought patterns are irrational, and that sort of anything that you ask for is like too much, or like any sort of expectation of like being treated well is like too much to ask, because you're somebody with, like, you know, serious mental illness, and like you have emotional dysregulation and whatever. So like, oh, it's too much to ask for like somebody to treat me well, or to like give me any sort of validation that I might need. It all has to be on me. And that's just like not true at all. Like, there are people that are going to want to work with you to make you feel supported and feel better, and feel confident in that relationship. And you'll know when someone isn't responsive to that, that isn't necessarily a person that you like need to have in your life. And not saying cut off everybody that tries to set boundaries with you, because that isn't good either. But when somebody is really unwilling to work with you to sort of help you feel supported in your relationship with them, if that's somebody that's saying that they really care about you, then I think that that's a sign that you're not asking for too much, and maybe that's just not the right person to be able to give that to you in a friendship or a romantic sense.
So there's a lot of stigma around BPD and relationships. I know some folks are actually chatting about it in the chat box a little earlier, so I want to address that. Maybe the panel can talk about how, you know, how do you respond to that statement that there's a lot of stigma in BPD and that somebody with BPD can't be in a relationship? I mean, clearly you're all proof that that's not true, right? We're all proof here that that's not true. But let's talk about that a little bit. Meryl, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So I would respond. Well, I've been with my boyfriend now for in September, but that's like considerable amount of time for me. It's pretty crazy to see how far we've grown together, and so it's definitely that people with BPD can't be in relationships. It's possible. I mean, it's 100% a thing that we can do. But yeah, I've been with my boyfriend for 4 years. We live together now in Montclair. We just moved in the beginning of the year. We're doing like regular like young adult things. Like, he works, I go to school. We cook, we clean, we argue. You know, we still have our differences. It's not perfect. I don't think any relationship is perfect, but we argue. Every other, maybe we should, I'm going to break up with you. But then like 2 hours later, we're like, I'm still, you know, but we learn to work through it, and we're very open and honest about with each other. And that's how we have been. And that's what I hope that we can be. I'm kind of intensely angry. But when I'm happy too, and feel also this intense love. And I think it's really not fair to say like, oh, it's too like intense.
Danielle, I think you're muted.
So sorry. Yes, I was muted. I was saying I'm sorry that we lost Meryl, but I'm sure she'll be back momentarily. And Coral, did you want to jump in and respond to that? Oh, wait, no, here's Meryl. We got her back.
It's okay. You guys can go on. I kind of just freaked out.
Good. We can come back to you too. No worries.
I think that's something like the stigma is something I'm trying to work through right now. Because there's this misconception that people with BPD like can't really get close to people, or can't really like be in a healthy like be independent and not be so codependent on their partner and stuff like that. But I'm learning myself like, hey, how can I build like genuine relationships? How can I build trust in a relationship, which I have been able to do and find kind of like that comfort level of like, hey, this feels safe. And I'm able to say like, this relationship is safe. And by that, I mean is, I have emotional support. I have someone that understands my diagnosis. So I definitely think it's possible, and unfortunately you hear more stigma about like, people with BPD are toxic or like they are like controlling, and I definitely find that to be false. Like, yes, there's reasons behind behaviors as to like why we might not want somebody to leave us, or why, we might want somebody to follow our script as to like what we want to see in a relationship and stuff. But I think that's where communication is very, important, to be able to vocalize those things in your relationship. But yes, we hear a lot of people with BPD or this or that, but I think today we're showing proof that it's possible to have these friendships and these relationships and kind of move forward, and kind of break that stigma that we see in society now.
Kimberly R.
Yeah, I think there are just like a lot of the time when you look into like start Googling or whatever about like how to deal with BPD in relationships, there's some just like really awful places on the internet where people are just sort of saying like any behavior that somebody with BPD does, like anything they say to you, like it's all manipulation, it's all like toxic, like these are just the worst kind of people, like they have no desire to improve themselves, no desire to change. And I just think that like that could not be further from the truth. Like I feel like for myself and the other people I have in my life that have BPD are so committed to working on themselves. And I'm not saying that that's true for everyone, but someone that's like in the process of recovery and really hoping to work on themselves and improve their life, like those people are so committed to um really examining themselves and having this like tremendous self-awareness and really working to understand how their behavior affects other people or how they respond to things with that. But it's also, I see a lot of people, having any sort of toxic experience in a relationship and being like, this person must have a personality disorder because like my relationship with them was bad and like it couldn't possibly be my fault, like it has to be theirs. And I think all of that is it's so unhelpful, and it's like really putting a lot of responsibility on people with BPD to sort of be like, okay, I'm just going to take myself entirely out of like having relationships with other people, which isn't fair to us. Like, it's entirely possible to have healthy romantic and friendship relationships with other people. Like, it's not only possible, but like it is extremely likely. Like, if you continue to work on yourself and if you continue to open yourself up to having people come into your life that understand you, like it's totally possible to have like beautiful, healthy, complicated, interesting relationships with BPD. And I don't think that that the people that say otherwise like know what they're talking about at all, quite frankly.
Well, thank you for being so open about that. I guess the last question I have before we move into, we do have some questions in the chat or in the Q&A box that I want to get to, but I want to hear from our panel about a meaningful or successful relationship and how maybe you've worked through some of the stuff that may have come along with that. And more importantly, I think, what advice do you have for the people that are listening to us today about navigating relationships if you're someone living with BPD?
Yeah, so I guess the relationship that I would want to talk to in this is with my best friend, who's named Alex. We met when I was 18, my first semester in college. Before I was diagnosed, we had a very, very tumultuous like first couple of years of friendship, like sort of falling in and out of a romantic relationship, and I became like extremely obsessive. He was extremely avoidant. We like had so much love, but it was just like horribly unhealthy. And he said to me at a point, like, I cannot be friends with you anymore. Like, I'm drawing this line, like, good luck in your life, but like I'm not going to be a part of it. And long story short, several years later, we're like, he is one of the closest people in my life. And the way that we've sort of done that is because both of us are so committed to kind of working on being extremely open with each other, and really there's like nothing I can't say to him and vice versa. And it took us a while to sort of like come back to each other after that initial sort of like break in our friendship, but it was just like a lot of really sustained work and commitment on both of our ends. And I think that it's worth it, and really possible to sort of repair a relationship like that, if it means enough to both of you.
I'm going to just keep going across my screen. Coral, what could you add to this one?
Yeah, I would say a very meaningful relationship that I have is my friendship with my best friend, Cadil. We probably met about 5 years ago, and I had found somebody who I felt understood me and kind of like had a lot of patience with me. I would go through phases of like being really close and being really like into the relationship, and then sometimes like going as far as like deleting him off of social media, or like really not wanting to be close because I didn't know if I can trust this person staying in my life. But I became open with kind of like those emotions that I would be scared or like anxious or things are too good to be true kind of thing. And he was very receptive to that. And very understanding. And we met before I was diagnosed with BPD, but he was there in the times of like when I was inpatient treatment. He was one of the people that I would call and like explain like, hey, this is how treatment is going. This is how I'm learning about what's going on. And his support really meant a lot to me, that he was there at that time. And he would reassure me that he loved and cared about me. And up to this day, I wanted to also work on myself to have like these healthy friendships and not always have it be about me, but like, be empathetic and be supportive and be a great friend to him. So, it would go both ways. And yeah, it's, I'm appreciative of him because he knows everything like I go through. He knows, my past relationships. He knows my history, but he's able to give me like very non-biased like advice. Like he's very truthful and very he knows I have BPD and stuff, but no, he's able to call me out on stuff when he needs to. So he's very honest. And yeah, I think you kind of know when you meet somebody, like if they are going to be very supportive or they're going to be really impactful in your life. And it's about trusting the process too. When I meet somebody, my first thought is how long are they going to be in my life? But it's been shifted into like, what can I build with them? Like at this moment, what can I build with them now? And that's kind of how I've been navigating my newer friendships. But I would say that that's some piece of advice that I'd give to those joining us today.
That's excellent. Yeah. And it's so hard to be open with new people. So I think just that little piece of advice about how you've shifted your thinking to, what can this person bring to my life now? Right. That's incredible. Meryl, what do you want to add to this one?
So I think a very successful a meaningful relationship is the one that my boyfriend and I are building. I've been talking about him a lot. I'm just really proud of our relationship and how far we've come and what we've been through together. One thing I wanted to share, it was a piece of advice that my therapist gave me. So, because our perfect, he struggled with emotional difficulties, and so we're not like, we argue. I'm gonna be perfectly like honest. We like still have our issues, but and so sometimes there have been times I'm like, maybe this isn't good for us, both of us anymore. But so at least this was for me. I'm not making a generalization, but for me, he said, you're gonna learn how to be in a health if you're not in a relationship. And I'm not saying, like stay with a relationship, even if it's like, no, I'm not. But for me, I'm all about like the learning experience, and like I kind of have to learn through experience. Person, they're gonna be toxic to you. I'm probably not gonna listen, and I'm probably gonna still go try to be that person's friend until I see it, because I think that's how, for me, that's how I learn, is very much through like my experiences. And my advice would be to try to find the good, even in like maybe in the bad with a friendship, because let's say you're like with a friend, there's a lot of like bad moments, but there's always a silver lining. There's always, because and I think a lot of times when like all bad memories of stuff kind of rose to the top. But I just think it's important for every situation, whether it's a relationship or just an experience you're having, to think, oh, what were the good moments? Like maybe I stopped, took a breath, and like smelled 1 second. That's so.
All right. So thank you to Kimberly and to Coral and Meryl. We have about 6 or 7 minutes left. We've got some questions that I've seen in the chat, or rather in the Q&A box. So if you got some more questions, please feel free to keep them coming. I'm going to pull some out for us real quick, though. First, I just wanted to address, there were some folks that were asking questions in the chat and the QA box around finding resources. And if we know of any online real-time resources or support groups. So here's my chance to put a plug for Emotions Matter. Emotions Matter does do online peer-led support groups. So check that out at emotionsmatterbpd.org. And then I'm sure Emotions Matter can also connect with other resources. So first question. There seems to be a lot of unease and silence on the other end when I try to talk about BPD with my close friends. Do any of you want to speak about your own experiences in that regard? Anybody ever hear crickets when you try to talk to somebody about BPD? So any of you could feel free to sort of jump in on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my experience, that's sort of come from like a lack of either a lack of understanding or a sort of lack of realizing like how serious it is to you and how important it is to you. I feel like the ways that I've sort of been able to communicate most effectively with people is because I also tend to like, when I'm talking about serious things, I tend to like make a lot of jokes, and like it can sound like I'm sort of not like, it's not like actually as intense as it actually is. But Just being like, this is really important to me. This is something that like I would like you to know about if like we're going to pursue this relationship, or we're going to continue this friendship or whatever. Like, this is essential to me. This is part of who I am. And I think that for me has been the most effective in getting people to really listen.
Coral or Meryl?
I feel like I've experienced that probably more with my family. I come from a Hispanic family household, so talking openly about mental illness and specifically BPD, kind of like it's almost a different language. It's very difficult to kind of open their minds and educate them and say like, hey, this is what's going on, and this is these are some of my behaviors, and these are some things that are going on with me. So I mean, I could definitely relate that there's sometimes we don't get the responses or reception that we are looking for, which could be very discouraging at times, and it could be it could feel really lonely, but our job really, what we can do is just educate those around us, and it's it's not our responsibility or the way somebody responds to us. We will have those people who are very interested. We will have those people who are supportive. We will have those people who will ask questions, and I think that's the beautiful process of it. Being an advocate for ourselves, and the people who will want to be in our lives or will want to learn about what's going on will actually be very active in that process. So, I think you can do the best you can to educate and speak about like what's going on with you. And that's honestly the best you can do.
I'm going to go to our next question. This person said, I am nervous. I'm always nervous, rather, that others won't take my problems seriously when I bring something up because they're aware of my BPD symptoms regarding relationships and will write it off as symptomatic. How can I help them differentiate me from my symptoms?
That's a really
Meryl,
good
I'm going to
question.
ask you to jump in because I haven't heard from you in a minute.
Yeah, you can hear me still, right?
Yep.
Okay. That's a really good question. I get that question all the time in the form of, have you taken your meds? It's like very often, like I feel like someone trying to figure out, is she like, is it like an actual issue, or is it like a BPD, like kind of like you said, like symptom? Like, when was the last time you took your meds? So, it's hard even for me to determine what is like more BPD related and what is not. I don't know. That's a really good question. I'm actually like struggling trying to answer it. That's getting me thinking. I really appreciate that question.
Kimberly or Coral?
Yeah, I think somebody was saying in the chat earlier, and now I've lost their name. Laurel was saying something that I really liked, which was sort of like in the moment, sort of like waiting to, when you're feeling a big emotion, waiting to communicate something until sort of seeing if it feels as urgent in like a couple hours or in like a day or so can sort of help. Like, there's nothing you can really do, I feel like, to sort of differentiate for other people because they're not in your head as much, but I think it's helpful to be able to differentiate yourself. Like, if something still feels really urgent in 8 hours or in a day or two, then maybe it is like something that you do need to address, as opposed to like an impulsive feeling, and then knowing that you can better advocate for yourself and how the other person should respond.
Coral, do you want to add anything before we end today on this topic? Well, on that question, rather.
I definitely think you have to have those conversations with people that you trust and kind of know you, because if somebody writes me off just because, hey, like you have BPD, or like those are just patterns that you consistently have, I wouldn't find that like supportive, and I wouldn't find that like helpful for myself. But yeah, definitely just confide on those people who will give you like proper feedback and treat you like despite of your BPD, like you need advice and you need this help. And I'm here for you.
Awesome. So before we end today, I just want to quickly share the screen and invite you all to make a donation to support Emotions Matter for BPD awareness, and also to remind you that we are going to be doing our Walk for BPD on June 5th in New York City. So please join us in New York City if you can. And if you can't, please consider joining us for a hybrid event. And you can see information and get more information at emotionsmatterbpd.org. I want to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank Coral, Meryl, and Kimberly, and also want to thank the other Kimberly who had to jump off, who's been monitoring the chat for us in the background. So I appreciate all of you sharing all of your information and your stories, your information, and your wisdom. And hopefully it's made a difference for someone that's listening on the other end. Thanks so much, and enjoy the rest of BPDFest. I will see you later today. Have a great day, everybody.